following hours of deliberation yesterday, the Judicial Service Commission has nominated Supreme Court of Appeal Judge President Mandisa Maya to be the next Chief Justice. The interviews for the top four candidates took place from Tuesday last week, when the issues of transformation and gender parity in the judiciary took center stage. President Cyril Ramaphosa is yet to make a final decision on the appointment. For reaction, we speak to legal researcher Nkanyiso Ngqulunga, who joins us now. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, we've watched the interview process throughout the course of the week. There's been a lot said about the manner in which some of the questions were posed, and perhaps questions around the political angles. But a decision has been made. The name of Mandisa Maya has been put forward. And, of course, essentially, the ball is now in President Cyril Ramaphosa's court.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, Paul. And yes, after the deliberations by the Judicial Service Commission yesterday, which it took a very long hours, and after a very tight race, I think all the four judges were very brilliant. I think bringing a very different set of skills in terms of how they wanted to approach this thing of judicial functions and the administration of justice at the apex court, as well as being the head of all of courts in the country. And then they came at a decision that they would like to recommend Chief Justice Mandisa Maya, of which it's quite a remarkable recommendation. And I think that if we've seen that in our country, there has been a very shortage of women judges who are at her level in terms of achievements and getting as far as even getting into constitutional court. And I think that now, even though we had undertaken a very different process, because normally the president would nominate one candidate and they're interviewed, and effectively the president would make an appointment. But in this case, we had four candidates nominated by the members of the public, and I think that the president indicated that was doing that for transparency and openness. And I think that now it's with the president to whether, because he's not bound by the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission, so he can still appoint any of the candidates that he feels like should be appointed, but after consulting with the necessary parties as prescribed by the Constitution, of which I think it includes members of the National Assembly, members of political leaders, as well as the Deputy President. So it's quite a remarkable and extraordinary recommendation to have a female justice in the country, and I think that now it's incumbent upon the President to whether he does proceed with an appointment or he sees someone else fit for the office.
Of course, Nkanyiso, there will be no escaping the facts here that should President Cyril Ramaphosa appoint Judge Maya, she will essentially make history, being South Africa's first woman Chief Justice. And with that consideration, it also brings me to the sort of tone that President Cyril Ramaphosa has used in approaching matters of gender transformation, equality, gender-based violence, and how he's really been swaying towards ensuring that women are recognized in their respective fields. Is this perhaps an indication of perhaps that he may consider Judge Maya?
Yes, I think it's quite an important aspect. I think even the Judicial Service Commission may have looked at those factors, because the Constitution does make all those considerations. I think it is one of the greatest milestones. I think that the Constitution does make reference a lot to gender. So the efforts towards transformation exigencies in the country to ensure that women are equally represented in the position of power, we have been really lagging behind within the judicial circles to ensure that more women are becoming judges. So that is a very important factor, I think, that the President will have in mind when making an appointment, that first and foremost, what is the current representation of women on the bench in Constitutional Court, and how many women are represented. And we've seen with the two recent appointments vacancies that have been filled, two male judges that were appointed in Constitutional Court, which in my view does open for a space for more women to actually come on the bench. So it's a very important consideration for the President when making this appointment, and thinking about the fact that now he has this brilliant judge who's demonstrated that he can lead a division as much as he has done with leading the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now it's an opportunity for her to lead the Constitutional Court, but and she has demonstrated all the skills that one may need to have from a Chief Justice, and I think that she's done extraordinarily well. So now it's a very important consideration for the President to have in mind when making an appointment, and I think that we may actually have a first female Chief Justice in the country, and I'm optimistic about it.
And, you know, as we speak about, you know, a woman Chief Justice, the question was posed to Judge Maya about whether or not she thinks the country is ready for a woman Chief Justice. And her answer really has set the precedent, should she become the next Chief Justice, the precedent on approaching topics of women in such positions and whether or not they're capable. She spoke about how she is she's not here simply because she's a woman. She's a judge, and a worthy judge who's proving herself over 22 years. And she's also spoken about that it's important that she's a woman, but she's not good because she's a woman. She's simply a good woman judge, really setting the precedent on the approach that should be taken when asking questions like, is South Africa ready for a female Chief Justice?
Yes, in fact, I should lament that during the interviews, there were a lot of sexist questions that rose from the commissioners in approaching all these interviews, because most of the concerns of which were very patriarchal in my view and sexist, because they sought to suggest that there was a point in time when South Africa was never ready to have a woman leading the judiciary, and I think that this like heteronormativity, this whole thing of thinking that whenever there's a male leadership, then that effectively becomes a common sense or like sort of default leadership, that it's always something that we can like. But when it's time for women to rise into power, we want to rationalize those things and make it a whole lot of set of sexist comments around those things. And you may have seen even during the interviews when one of the commissioners mentioned that Judge Mandisa had broke the glass ceilings for most women. And then there was like a moment where like Judge Mandisa Maya was in tears, and I think that the comments from the floor was like, obviously women are emotional beings, but if we could just compare that in 2017 with Judge Zondo when he was being interviewed, he when he was remembering his own struggles to emerge as a judge, I think he shed a lot of tears, but I think that was never considered to be an emotional person. Mm-hmm. So I think those issues, whenever a woman is rising into power, I think everything tends to be very gendered and based on the stereotypes that we already have against women who must rise into power. So I think that the question of whether or not South Africa was ready for a female Chief Justice was a complete sexist question, because women are equally responsible to discharge all the judicial functions in as much as their male counterpart in the judiciary can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion, really asking and, you know, generating some important questions around matters of gender parity, which essentially really, you know, Judge Maya emphasized throughout the course of her interview process, which, of course, just looking at the Sunday Times here, the shambolic JSC interviews could face possible legal action. The line of questioning could be going in the courts, as we will continue to keep an eye on those outcomes. That was legal researcher Nkanyiso Ngqulunga giving us those details. Still